well disguised. I had to leave my life behind.
Big one. Vladimir Izmayov, a colonel in the Soviet Air Force, 43 years old, the Soviet air attaché at the Soviet embassy in Washington. The FBI said he had just picked up some classified U.S. documents left at a suburban Maryland drop by a U.S. Air Force officer who was working with the FBI. The whole thing was a trap. There was a scuffle, an arrest, and today an order to leave the country. We're going to tell as much as is known about the story. First, the FBI's exhibit of some evidence it confiscated in the case.
The camera is a wide-angle 35mm camera, but what is unusual is the film cassette which the Soviets provided to the officer. They look like standard Kodak cartridges, but actually inside there's ultra-thin film that appears to be cellophane, and enable the officer to take 130 frames of film with this camera. The officer was instructed to take documents home if he could from work and to film these documents with a 35mm camera. If unable to film the documents at home, unable to take them out of his office, he was to use a rollover camera. This camera, when held on end, can be passed over a page on a document, and with approximately 3 strokes, copy the whole page. There are small film cassettes that were given by the Soviets. One cassette has enough film to, again, copy 130 pages of documents.
Agent Walsh went on to describe how the spy operation worked.
All of the drop operations controlled by Colonel Izmailov were pretty much the same. He would leave a package, usually disguised as a milk carton, at the base of a telephone pole someplace in the rural part of Virginia or Maryland. Generally, he would dig a little hole and bury this package, and in the package would be concealed money for the Air Force officer, as well as cellophanes with instructions, film for his rollover camera, and instructions for future meets. The colonel would then proceed to another location where he would pick up a similar package left by the Air Force officer, which contained documents, films, and what have you. The Air Force officer, after leaving his package, would go to another location and leave, as we said earlier, a soda can, a sun-kissed orange soda can at a particular location, so that if the Soviet drove by and saw the can, he knew that everything was safe and that the package had already been left. This technique was used throughout this operation.
More on the case now from Lyle Denniston, who is covering the story for the Baltimore Sun. Lyle, the FBI agent Walsh kept referring to him as colonel. Is he a real Air Force colonel in the Soviet Air Force?
Well, according to the government's information, he is both an Air Force officer and a member of the military intelligence agency, the GRU, which is the military equivalent of the KGB. He serves in both functions, and while he's in this country apparently more recently, he's been rather preoccupied with the latter function.
I see. Now, was this a trap from the very beginning?
Well, in the sense that the Air Force officer from our side was cooperating with the FBI, I guess you could say it's a trap. But as we understand it, at least from the FBI, the contacts that were made with this officer by the colonel apparently are quite routine. We were told that this goes on at supper clubs, at restaurants, that Soviet military officers will sidle up to American military personnel routinely and start talking about common interests, about artillery weapons, other things, and make these overtures. And apparently they're quite blatant about it, completely unsubtle. And in this instance, a colonel, or we don't know the rank, an American Air Force officer took him up on it, responded to it, and we're told quite soon thereafter, I'm not sure that it was immediate, reported to his superiors, and the FBI then began coaching him as to how to deal with the Soviet officer. And he was checked out for a period of months by the Soviet to make sure he had access to the secrets. And then the operation began sometime about a year ago now.
So it's been in effect about a year.
It's been in effect. Apparently, the Soviet officer returned to this country in October of 1984 for his second tour. It wasn't long after that he contacted our Air Force officer and made this proposition.
Did the U.S. Air Force officer pass real secrets to this guy in order to make it seem real?
Well, the FBI told us today that they passed him some bona fide information, that is, real secrets. But they said the Air Force had sanitized the material so that it was of no value to the Soviet Union. Much of the material apparently was doctored so that it wasn't real. The FBI claims to be, and we have no reason to doubt it, very good at doctoring classified material to make it seem real.
Was an attempt made, or did the FBI say whether or not an attempt was made to turn this guy? In other words, when they caught him last night, say, "Gotcha. Now here's the only way out is for you to become one of our people"?
That seems not to have unfolded that way at all. Apparently the arrest process was very quick and very simple, and the man took a swing at, in fact made a connection with the jaw of one of the FBI arresting officers, and he was handcuffed and taken in. The details of the arrest were few and skimpy today, but it appears that having watched this fellow for a year and a half, that the FBI apparently was content to just take him in and call the State Department and have the Soviet embassy come and get him, in effect.
We just saw a hunk of Agent Walsh going through the various paraphernalia. Is that an impressive array of spy paraphernalia?
It certainly is. It certainly is, Jim. I mean, 2 large bulletin boards with cameras and this astonishingly interesting cellophane film, which is very small, but you can get a great deal on it. It looked like something that was almost fictional, James Bondish in its interest and its fascination, but apparently not unusual. And this kind of material is around, it's available, and the Soviets supplied it.
And it's also not unusual, is it, Lyle, for them to just let the guy go home? I mean, a lot of people would say, well, why in the world? They caught this big guy. Why don't they go ahead and prosecute him? But no, that's not in the cards, right?
Well, first of all, they couldn't prosecute him, Jim, because he has, as a authorized and accredited diplomat from the Soviet Union, he has immunity to arrest and prosecution. So that as soon as it was established by the arrival of a Soviet embassy official at the FBI that he was an accredited diplomat, he then had immunity and they couldn't prosecute him. I think what may be different in this case is that there's a tremendous flow of publicity today, a tremendous show that the FBI put on for all of us, and I think that's a little bit different. The FBI at times in the past, I know, has let some of these people go without any ceremony and with no publicity whatever. But now I think it's important to send signals to, I think one of the signals that we were told the FBI was trying to send today was to say to the Soviet, look, we've got you under watch, we are paying attention to you. In fact, we were told today that this was not the first attempt by Colonel Izmailov to recruit an American agent for him. He apparently had done it other times. But there was much publicity today, I think, to send a signal to the Soviet Union that we're on to you.
And specifically to another Soviet spy, say, here in Washington, who is gathering information maybe as we speak from another potential American source. Hey, you don't know whether this guy's legit or not. Is that the signals also?
I think that's also, and I'm sure that what they're trying to do is send a signal to American military and civilian personnel who have access to secrets that we are going to catch you at that because we have such a close eye on what the Soviets are doing. And last December, I think the director of FBI, Mr. Webster, said we are putting a spider web around